a wonderful person, our own Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Geoffrey Onyema.
Good afternoon, everybody. There's so many distinguished dignitaries here today. It's quite a challenge for me to acknowledge all of them. But first and foremost, the inimitable, one and only Chief Tony Okoroji. It's really a great honor and a great pleasure for me to be here today. And of course, Professor Obiegara, and some of the ones I know, because I don't have a list of all the dignitaries here. Asika, Mekamba, who I know, of course, Professor Bambo, and all the others that I hope to get to know better today. As I said, it's truly a great honor, a great privilege to be here with all of you today. You know, as Chief Tony said, 3 years ago, I was the Deputy Director General of the World Intellectual Property Organization in Geneva. And I had the bright, but some might say not so bright, idea to challenge my boss, the Director General, for his position of Director General of the organization. And I was 18 months from retirement. I had spent 30 years in the organization. And I didn't win in the end. It was relatively close. And so, of course, I did the honorable thing and resigned or retired, took early retirement. And I was clearing out my office. And I had, of course, for 30 years, I had lectured in many countries around the world. And so I had a lot of notes and various documents, books. But I said, well, I'm not going to have anything more to do with intellectual property. I'm going to turn over that page. I don't need this. And I threw them all away. And said that was, as far as I was concerned, my lot with intellectual property. 30 years, not marriage, but maybe partnership. So I didn't require a formal divorce. And so it was quite a simple matter, throw them away and move on. And I came back to Nigeria, a retiree. Now, as I said, I really didn't know I would have to talk about intellectual property ever again. But the legendary persuasive powers of Chief Tony Okoroji, who invited me to this event and kept reminding me about it a number of months ago, meant that I somehow have to try and dust the atrophied knowledge, if I had any knowledge at all, dust up again very, very quickly. So I'll try and speak to you about what I can remember from those years of intellectual property. You know, there was a judge that talked about somebody doing his incompetent best. So I'll do my incompetent best, but so I'm just letting you know that since I'm no longer in the field, and I haven't been for 3 years or more now, do forgive me for any shortcomings. And it's true also, as Chief Tony said, you know, the president of Côte d'Ivoire was arriving today. I had done some of the arrangement, and ordinarily I really needed to be there. But I said that I really would have to be here. But another reason why I really wanted to be here is the great admiration and pride I have for Nigeria's creative industries. Nollywood, the musical industry is such a source of great pride for us. We're going through a period where the image of Nigeria has been so severely dented by, you know, so many different things. And these two industries really stand out as beacons of hope and a source of tremendous pride. And I cannot congratulate Chief Tony enough for what he has done in this industry. The creation of Coson, I know from WIPO engaging with the copyright sector in Nigeria, and indeed intellectual property sector in Nigeria, what a real achievement it is, the dynamism and the sheer energy and drive that is required to create such an outfit is really one that it's not easy for one person, well, not one person, but for an individual really to drive it with the force that he has done. And for those reasons, I really felt that I had to be here today to share with you the successes of our creative industries, and also to share with you my incompetent knowledge of the subject matter. So, intellectual property, knowledge economy, because we are in a knowledge economy now, and this is the economy that is generating tremendous wealth around the world. That's completely transformed our world of today. Years gone by, and still to a certain extent today, the bricks and mortars, land, are really the sources of wealth. Manufacturing, agriculture, industry are usually what we rely on for wealth creation. But the knowledge economy has really come, and new sources of wealth, of intangible wealth, has really dawned. And how we in Nigeria especially can put in place the building blocks to tap into that, to create the wealth, to use that as the engine and the motor for the development of our country is really the challenge. Because we have seen that countries without those natural resources I've talked about, there's no petroleum, no crude oil, and other things, how some of them are transforming themselves, because of these intangible assets, really plugging in to the knowledge economy today and delivering real dividends for their country. We even see like Silicon Valley and places like that in California that through their knowledge-based companies and organizations have really been able to catapult California as a state into the 7th richest, if it were a country in the world. So it's vitally important that we take advantage and that we plug in to the knowledge economy of the world today. And so I want to talk about what it means and the elements, the challenges, where we are in Nigeria in that regard, and what we really should be doing to try to really exploit and key in to the knowledge economy. Intellectual property is the basis of it, really. It provides the incentive, because the philosophy of intellectual property protection is to provide a limited period of protection, of commercial exclusivity. And during this period of exclusivity, it could be 20 years for patents, 15 years renewable for trademarks, a lifetime plus 70 years for copyright. But in any case, a period of exclusivity for the creator. During that period, the creator has a monopoly, that exclusive right, that he can exploit or she can exploit the benefits and the fruits of the labor and the investment, and recoup costs of investment and so forth. And it's this incentive that drives people to be creative and to have this creative society. Intellectual property rights covers copyright protection for literary, musical, artistic works, and other related rights. Patent protection covers inventions, Design protection covers the ornamental, aesthetic aspects of objects. And trademarks and service marks, of course, protect goods and services. Geographical indications protects indications of source. Now, Coson is the Copyright Society of Nigeria. It's a musical collecting society charged by its members, the artists, with the task of collecting royalties on their behalf for any reproduction or performance of their music anywhere in the world. And often to achieve this, Coson would have to enter into agreements with other collecting societies around the world and have reciprocal arrangements for that. Nigeria is also a party to some international conventions in the field of intellectual property. And it's important, really, because, the knowledge economy is very often about ideas. It's about, and these are not tangible. So it's not as if your customs can, seize them at the point of entry. Ideas cross frontiers, they're not seen. So you need an international convention to be able to enforce the respect for intellectual property rights. And as far as copyright is concerned, which covers musical works, of course, the Berne Convention for the protection of literary and artistic and musical works is the premier international convention for that. And of course, the treaty provides protection for an author or a composer of musical works. And as I said, usually for a duration, because we're Coson being a musical society, talking about, I'll focus more on the copyright sector. Most of the countries of the world now have a protection period of the lifetime of the author or the composer, and then 50 or 70 years after. And so even after the death of an author, the heirs, the estate, still can have that copyright protection. And it's an exclusive right that continues. And typically, this protection, the permission can also be given by the author through a license or whatever for other people to perform those works. And you see a lot of that in the musical world today, where people sample from other people's songs and so forth, or also produce and sing other people's songs and so forth. So the author has that right, and often for a fee. And a perfect example that really captures all this is a recent case that just took place with the recording artist, American recording artist, Pharrell, who I'm sure some of the younger ones would know. Professor Viagara might not, but some of the younger but the American artist Pharrell and Robin Thicke. You recall that they had a massive hit song. You'll probably remember the video with ladies walking up scantily attired, and some people considered it a bit risque, that video. And it was a song, Blurred Lines, that was a massive international hit. But, for those of you who are maybe a bit older, you would have recalled maybe a certain artist by the name of Marvin Gaye. And he had a hit song called Got to Give It Up. And so the eagle-eyed ones, or I would say sharp-eared ones, noticed the similarity between the two songs. And but of course Marvin Gaye was already dead, had been dead for a number of years. But the 70 years I was talking about after the life of an author, which the US employs, meant his family could sue. And you know what? They won for copyright, that the similarity was strong enough, and they were awarded $7.4 million. Not bad, huh? So So that's copyright for you. Now, the World Intellectual Property Organization, where I spent 30 years of my life with, is one of the specialized agencies of the United Nations. And it was created in part based on the assumption that there was a significant causal relationship between intellectual property, technology transfer, and development. And that's very important. So that belief that intellectual property is a source for technology transfer and that will lead to development. So of course that's very attractive for developing countries. The reality is that the countries and the individuals that own most of the intellectual property rights in the world, especially patents, are from the industrialized countries. And so this is quite an issue on this, which I'll touch on going forward, as to whether intellectual property is being sufficiently exploited by developing countries, and whether developing countries are not at a disadvantage with regards to intellectual property, because, but you'll see the reason as I go on. And WIPO, World Intellectual Property Organization, declares itself, and I quote, to be dedicated to developing a balanced and accessible intellectual property system which rewards creativity, stimulates innovation, and contributes to economic development while safeguarding the public interest. Because